Hello listeners, and welcome to Plugged In, the energy news podcast from Montel, where we bring you the latest news, issues and changes happening in the energy sector. Welcome to the fifth and final episode of our CEO Summer Series, where we put the big questions to key energy leaders. We've heard from Energy UK, the CEO of E.ON, the Finnish TSO and the founder of Restart Energy. And now we finish off our series back in Germany, where we're talking about regulation. What are the challenges for energy regulators in 2025? Are they seen as a help or a hindrance to market participants? And what does Germany's bidding zone, or zones, look like in the future? In this episode, I put all these questions to Annegret Groebel, the President of the Council of European Regulators and Director of International Relations at the German Regulatory Authority, also known as the BNetzA. I hope you enjoy this final episode of our summer series. A warm welcome to the podcast, Annegret.
Thank you, Richard.
There has been a lot of criticism that these grids, or the grid expansion from North to South Germany, has been very, very slow. Is that something that you would accept, and how can that be speeded up?
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, it was slower than we hoped for. The permitting took longer, and in particular also the construction took longer, or takes longer. Now we have this element of the overriding public interest, which speeds up the permitting, and we also see now that construction takes up, so that we are now trying to catch up, reducing then, of course, the loop flows, the redispatching, etc. Now, there was at the end of April, the ENTSO-E, the European Transmission System Operator Organization, ENTSO-E, published their bidding zone review report or study. And while they have not mentioned that there is a structural congestion or structural bottleneck, nonetheless, the recommendation is that Germany would be split up in 5 zones. We have one bidding zone now, and now the ball lies with the member states. They have to look into this, and ACER is going to give a recommendation or an assessment then of what the member states decide or not decide, and then finally the Commission is again looking into this. There is a little bit of a discussion of who has the final say or who has the final word. Member states clearly say that this should go, or that this lies with the member states. And of course, I mean, you have heard certainly the new government, which in Germany entered into force into office on May 6th. We reconfirmed that Germany is not ready to accept a split of the bidding of the German bidding zone. Yeah,
Is that also the position of the regulator, Annegret?
Yes.
Okay.
Because,
So keep the single bidding zone. Yeah.
Keep the single bidding zone. There may be different reasons why the government says it, but for us, the main argument is that the German bidding zone is one of the biggest, or probably the biggest, and is one of the few that has a high liquidity.
It's probably the most liquid in the world, isn't it?
It's probably the most liquid in the world, exactly. And any split would reduce this liquidity, and we doubt that this brings, in the end, more benefits than it does damage. Yeah, because everyone relies on the liquidity in the German bidding zone. So we think that this is an argument, an economic argument, and we are an economic regulator, to maintain the German bidding zone.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I think your colleagues in the UK and in Sweden are also grappling with, this issue of zonal pricing versus how many bidding zones is optimal. So I don't think it's unique to Germany, but I think certainly that's where it's very crucial in terms of the power flows in the region. But Annegret, I'd like to ask you another question, and that is, in your time in the energy sector, what has surprised you the most?
What surprised me the most is probably how fast indeed renewables took up. Yeah, I mean there was a doubt whether this energy transition that was called into action by Chancellor Merkel in 2011, that we would have enough energy sources, and that there could be probably a problem of security of supply. The opposite was the case. Yeah, as I said before, we had to cut. The bottleneck was not the energy sources. Yeah, were not the renewables. They took up much faster, and the cost regression was enormous. Yeah, I mean, of course, there was a lot of incentives of support schemes. Yeah. But I think no one would have expected the success and that the both offshore wind but also the solar panels, etc., would take up at such a speed. And of course, we now have to make sure that the grid follows, yeah, so that we can synchronize. This is our biggest challenge right now, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was at a conference in June, and it was very clear that, I'm hearing the same issues that are creeping up again over the last 20 years. So the two main issues, it's building out the grid to meet the demands of both supply and demand, but also permitting, dealing with permitting, speeding up permitting. Has anything changed in the last 20 years? Has this gone quicker, or has it improved?
Well, the permitting certainly with this possibility to shorten the permitting by saying the grid here is in overriding public interest. You could reduce certain checks and balances. Certain checks that you otherwise would have to perform. Yeah. So and then there was also another element that regards always the environmental testing. Yeah, and the impact on the environment. And beforehand, more or less, if there was any rare bird, you had more or less to stop it. And now we say, well, it's not the single rare bird that counts as long as we maintain the rare bird class as such, yeah, or the category. So you see that there is a little bit of interpretation there that we do, but also more or less that these so-called overriding public interest saying that this beats the other elements, yeah, and I think rightly so, because otherwise the bureaucracy that we had before was enormous, yeah, was enormous. And there was also one thing or two things that also speed up this permitting process. One is that the legislation cut one instance of court appeal, yeah, so that would not would be shorter. You still had the possibility to challenge something, but it is shorter. And now there's also the possibility to compensate, for example, farmers when they allow a grid, a line to pass their farmland or something like this. Sometimes this is a bit difficult, and there are mixed experiences, I have to say. But alone the possibility to, let's say, to include local participants and to overcome by, for example, saying you can profit from this wind park as well, or from this grid line as well, helps um, to reduce this NIMBY effect. Yeah, because that is something, and of course there are some organizations that played on this. Yeah, that tried to block everything. Yeah. But now we try to have town hall meetings to make sure that the grid is that we use the most efficient line, etc. We take up proposals from local NGOs, etc. And they do have a good. We had a steep learning curve in this as well, so that we hope that people accept that if they want renewables, and this is still the overarching goal and acceptance, yeah, they also have to accept that the grid has to be restructured. Yeah, I mean this is the reality. Yeah, you cannot have everything. Yeah, if you want to exit nuclear, and that is clearly the wish of the population, then you need to, and you don't want to go to Russian gas again, and that is clearly as well the case. Then you need to go for renewables, and people accept this. But with renewables, you also have to then adjust and adjust mainly the grid.
And I think that's crucial, isn't it? The involvement of local populations
Involvement of local, yeah.
and the acceptability or
Yeah.
their acceptance of
Yes.
grids and of power plant facilities of the supply side. And I think in some countries they were even some of the revenues from these renewable plants go back into the local community, and that's obviously quite crucial.
And that is a good thing. That is a good thing. Yeah.
Absolutely,
So to make sure that they participate, and because we also need the participation, the active participation, not only the acceptance, but also in the future the active participation to provide, for example, demand-side flexibility, yeah, with, for example, electric vehicle charging and things like that, or the famous heat pumps, yeah. That all brings, and that at the same time, it's not only something that causes, let's say, a change of behavior, but that also in the end brings you a lower bill. Yeah, I mean, this is probably the right now in 2025, the difficulty we see that it takes longer and is more expensive to adjust the grid than everyone expected. So that we have now a period where we have to explain people that it takes a bit longer, and that right now there is this transition phase where it also costs a bit more. But in the end, we are still convinced that when we have this flexible system and sustainable renewables, then in the end, the system and the costs will be lower. Yeah, this is now the most difficult phase, of course, because you have transactional or transformational costs. Yeah, for sure. And you need to at the same time incentivize people to buy in, yeah, to participate, to buy in, so that they in the end know, okay, this is a period where we have to go through, but then in the end we all profit, not only because we have a climate neutral system, but because it's also less costly for ourselves and we have a reduced bill.
Yeah, absolutely crucial, Annegret. But I just want to go back to 2005, Annegret, because I remember that when the Bundesnetzagentur, the Federal Network Agency, when it was first formed or talked about, there was quite a lot of reluctance from the industry, wasn't it? It wasn't warmly welcomed, shall we say? But because they had some kind of self-policing mechanism, didn't they, organization in a way. But is it? Are you now? Do you feel that you're accepted within the energy sector in Germany?
I would say yes, but you're quite right. In the beginning, they were not happy that now someone else would do it ex ante, yeah, because, as you rightly say, there was some sort of self-policing. And our national competition authority, the cartel office, they could intervene ex post, according to like saying this is an abuse of your market power, yeah, or that stems from the grid, because the grid is a natural monopoly.
Mm. So so if we explain to the listeners who aren't aware of what ex ante and ex post is, so ex ante, I suppose, is something when you set the rules beforehand for the and ex post is when you come in after the event and investigate. Yeah.
Exactly, because and that of course means for the cartel office, they see that the prices were extremely excessively high, and the charges, but they had difficulty in intervening, and it was too late. Yeah, they had a case and they had proven the case, but it never really um, entered into force. Yeah, and so then finally the law was changed, and the BNetzA got the power to set the rules, and in particular the network charges, before they could before they could charge these to the users of the grid and to the suppliers, etc. So that was the major change from ex post to ex ante, and it was an external control. It was no longer the self-policing, which almost nearly ever works.
Yeah, no, exactly.
not in an industry that is a natural monopoly. That's for sure. And yes, so they were not happy about this. This was about the charging, but there were also in 2006 one of the earliest events that we had to investigate was that there was a sort of regional blackout because of a huge storm, of a thunderstorm in the north of Germany, yeah, where there was where the grid did not perform because the lines were broken, yeah. And also there was one other incident where the lights in Portugal went out because the ship crossed a line. Probably you have heard of this.
In the canal, wasn't it? Canal in also
Yes,
in the canal,
exactly, in
northern
the
Germany.
canal,
Yeah.
exactly. And well, then the operators came. They were very small. Yeah, that this shouldn't have happened. And we said, well, look, it happened, which shows that your famous operational handbooks, etc., do not work in the end. Yeah. So the European Commission then proposed binding network codes, and we also investigated what we can do to make sure that they prepare for these type of incidents, even if they have a rare probability. Yeah, and this is something that also, of course, made a change for them. And I think now they have also accepted this part, because now this is also something that the Commission is reinforcing. Grids need to become more resilient and more secure. You remember, because there is the grid is getting, and the whole system is more complex with distributed energy, etc., with a two-way feeding in, yeah, not only for households taking out, but also feeding in when they have surplus energy in from their solar panels or from their PVs, etc. But you see that what happened in Spain, yeah. So everyone now is aware that the grid needs to get resilient, that it needs to get secure. But at that time, it was, and because the probabilities are changing, yeah. So and this again is something you have to enforce with binding legislation, and then also binding regulation, and that is what made the change. And then, as I said, I think this was 2005, and I think we also have now the reputation of being let's say, a serious regulator. But of course, there was also the change, and we should not forget this, in 2011 with the energy transition, which in terms of influence, political influence. I'm not talking on influence on the regulator. I mean, they tried, of course, as well, but we have our measures to stay independent. Um, but they lost, I think, a lot of the influence that the operators had before with this energy transition and the pushing through of the energy transition and the nuclear exit. Yeah, beforehand. And of course, this goes together with rules of unbundling on the transmission level. Yeah, so because beforehand they were all the utilities, they had generation, they had the grid, and they had the retail business. Yeah. And that, of course, gave them a lot of power. They only needed to wave and say, "Well, the lights go out if you regulate us too hard, or if you change anything in the system." And the government said, "Well, we saw the risk that has happened with nuclear in Japan, and we also now see that the regulator needs to enforce these binding rules on the security side, but also on the efficiency side, because after all, we have a duty vis-a-vis users, industrial users, as well as households, of course, to make energy affordable. Yeah. So, and this can only happen if the system works efficiently.
And for all sides. So, Annegret, just a final question, really. You mentioned complexity, and obviously, what we're seeing now in and the market in Germany is one of the most liquid markets. How in oversight, the market oversight, how confident can you be to ensure that there is no market manipulation? I mean, there must be millions of transactions that you're looking at and all the data flows in the deals and the trades that are going on. How confident can you be that you catch market abuse or manipulation when it happens?
That's a very good question. So you know that the so-called REMIT, that is a regulation on energy market integrity and transparency, and it provides us with the power to monitor, to supervise the wholesale energy trading, on the wholesale energy market. And we do this together with ACER. ACER has a huge centralized databases. So all market participants, operators, but also traders, etc., they have a duty to provide certain data, fundamental data, trading data to ACER, and ACER puts it in their big data base. And then ACER has also a surveillance software tool, and we also do have. And if ACER sees some suspicious element in the trading, in the data of the trading, they provide us with a so-called alert, all the European regulators. And then we can investigate this. And if there is a cross-border case, then we would liaise with, for example, the Austrian regulator or the other regulators that could be involved in these type of possible misuse or abuse of the trading. And so we would be able to prevent it in the best of cases, or to sanction it if it already is ongoing. And you see a lot. We also had already cases from the French regulator CRE, Spanish regulator CNMC recently, also again, or Danish regulator. They all publish it. And since 2024, ACER also has, under certain circumstances, investigatory powers in cross-border cases if the concerned regulators would not pick up an alert that they send us. Yeah, so that is the rule, which I think it did not yet happen, but in the future there is this additional element. Again, of course, a lesson learned from the crisis to make sure that also in times of, let's say, volatility or of trading turmoil, the supervision is functioning, and is functioning quickly. As I said, I'm very much convinced that the volatility and the trading and all the price increases that happened were explainable by fundamental factors like shortage of Russian gas. But of course you have to be vigilant, and therefore let's say the sharpening of the REMIT 2 now regulation is a result of these lessons learned, to make sure the supervision is there and is timely there, and is also having a sort of, let's say, we watch you effect.
Absolutely. Annegret, thank you so much for your look back at the start of the 2000s, but also a look into the future for the challenges ahead for the energy transition. Thank you very much for being a guest on the Plugged In podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed our CEO Summer Series. Next week, we'll be back to normal, and we'll be bringing you the latest news stories affecting the energy sector, as usual. If you enjoyed this discussion, please like, rate, and follow to make sure you get the latest podcast episodes as soon as we release them every Friday. We'd also love to read your reviews of the podcast. It helps us to keep up to date with what you, our listeners, think of our podcast and what content you want to receive more of. Finally, you can head to montelnews.com for more news and analysis from our team of journalists across Europe and beyond. See you next time.